internet is fairly light on your back history and your backstory, and we would absolutely love to hear a little bit about, Lee the Tyke and what life was like in Michigan before you decided water was your passion.
Life in Michigan was cold. It was cold in every sense of the word. I didn't enjoy Michigan. I didn't enjoy Saginaw. There was nothing about it that I liked. And at 25, I just said, there's a big world out there and I'm going to go find something. That Michigan cold goes right to the bone. I had started when I met Marianne. She told me if I was going to hang out with her, I had to have a real job. No more side hustles, no more poker games, no more pool games, no more, gambling, no more all the fun things. Right, Ross?
Yes.
So I went out and got a real job. I started my apprenticeship as a boilermaker. And so I worked down south predominantly in the 5 southeastern states, working high steel. I've always been attracted to try and do things that other people won't do or don't want to do or are afraid to do. And if it meets those 3 things for me, where do I sign? I am all in. Hanging by a little strap and a ladder 500 feet in the air, looking down on clouds, welding all day long, getting your ass burnt off. I mean, and you're wearing leathers and it's just like 100 degrees out. And the money was unbelievable.
What age was this?
I was 20, 25. It got hard on the kids moving around. And then when we added Josh to the mix, we had 5 of them. And Marion says, because when the job had finished, I worked for Chicago Bridge and Iron. You'd drag up, move on to the next job. It took a bit to, it was difficult to say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'll go work in a steel mill, which is what I did. God, I hated that. Making that same walk for the next 35 years and then getting a cheap steak dinner and an even cheaper gold watch. And then they say goodbye to you. And 2 years later, you die. Bottom fell out of manufacturing in general in the 80s. We got into the restaurant business. My part-time job was tending bar at the local Elks Club. So I thought I had the world by the ass. I was tending bar nights, making good money on tips, and thought I knew the hospitality industry. So we ended up in the Turks and Caicos and leased a restaurant down there that a friend of mine told me about. That was after having opened, I think, 3 places in Indiana.
Okay.
What part of Indiana?
LaPorte, about 60 miles outside of Chicago. In fact, it's so close to Chicago, we're on the same time zone as Chicago. The rest of Indiana is on Eastern Standard Time, not LaPorte. And it was funny because when we got down to Turks and Caicos, the Club Med that was down there already and had been there for quite a few years, they called it Club Turquoise. They had their own time zone. All of the managers and the waitresses and the bartenders, of which there were many, would call me up and say, "Are you still open?" I say, "Yeah." "Well, stay open because we're on our way. We're loading up the bus to pick up people at the airport." They loaded up with employees of Club Med and they'd roll down to my place and party. There were no laws like say, okay, you got to close at 2:00.
Oh, so constant party.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
you closed when you closed. The only place they had those rules were Club Med. So they got out at 10:00 and I was staying open just for them. I mean, a busload of people, hell yeah.
Right? It's worth it.
It was fine dining. And they were going to build a casino about 4 blocks down, casino and hotel. And unfortunately, they only made it up to the 2nd story and they ran out of money. It never happened and I went broke. It took a while, but eventually you have to have a work permit when you live there.
Okay.
So if you don't own your own business, you don't get a work permit because you're not an islander.
Okay.
And only islanders get to work, even if they don't want the job. You can't have it. Nobody in the world wants this job but me, but I'm not an islander, so you can't have it. That's how I got into yachting. I took a job on a sailboat, delivering it. Incidentally, that's also how I found out I got seasick.
How did you navigate being seasick and becoming a captain?
I traveled with a 5-gallon bucket when I would do my watches. Nobody would do a watch with me because I was dragging my bucket with me.
Sounds like me in a car.
And then I came back to the islands. And Marianne had already said if I took that trip that she was leaving. And obviously she was there when I came back and told her, I said, I figured out what I want to do when I grow up.
How did you meet Marianne?
Well, that's another weird story. She says the first time I met her, I didn't remember it. And I have no way to say that's not true because I don't remember it. As far as I'm concerned, I met her once and fell in love.
Oh,
I really did. The first time we went out, I went home and I told my sister, I said, I'm going to marry that girl. And I did.
That's wonderful.
It still is 49 years later. In today's day and age, it is, especially when you do what I do for a living.
Yes, you've had some wild nights we've seen.
Yeah, there's been one or two. I've always made it a practice, though, with anybody on board boat, is that I'm never alone with a female guest or crew member unless I have another person with me, ever. You never know who's going to want to pull a fast one. He did
Absolutely.
this. No, we're not going there.
Especially nowadays.
Right? Absolutely. People
Yeah.
At what moment did you really become comfortable as a captain?
Well, I still, whether I've driven the boat 1 time or 10 times or 100 times, when you latch onto the controls of a 200-foot yacht, you got to hold it like, I don't know, between 75 and 100, $150 million. And if you mess up, it's not going to bode well for your career at all. And knock on wood, I've never had an insurance claim filed. So, but if I'm taking it away from the dock, I get a knot in my stomach. And probably 30 seconds before that, I'll have to go to the bathroom. Same way taking it into the dock. But I always have a plan, and I involve the first officer and I involve the crew. And I say, now this is how we're going to approach the dock, or this is how we're going to come off the dock, just so everybody knows that we're on the same page. And here's what I want each and every one of you to do in this order. And all we have to do is execute it and hope that Mother Nature cooperates, doesn't throw us a curve, or some deckhand doesn't screw up and leave a line on when he shouldn't. That's happened before. And the same thing going into the dock. I tell them which lines I want tossed first, and this is how we're going to tie it up. I said, I can put it there in almost any weather conditions. Now, I may not be able to hold it there for very long. If it's blowing 30 knots, I'll drop the hook outside and we'll sit there until the wind drops down. 20, 25 knots I can manage most of the time, because I mean, let's face it, it's a big sail. And you get broadside to the wind, it's just going to push you where it wants. Mind you, to not mess with Mother Nature. I don't run my boat any different than I do if I was on TV or if I wasn't on TV. In fact, when I've had crew that were like too green, I would tell production, guess what? I'm not letting these guys do anything when we untie and when we tie up. I said, I'm bringing the guys that are actually with me, like the engineers and the first officer. And I said, I'm putting them out on deck because I don't trust these idiots until I get them trained. It's either that or we're not going anywhere. I tell them, we'll do anything you want to do as long as it's safe.
What is the hardest part about being captain?
Being captain. It's like everybody wants to do captain stuff until it's time to do captain shit. And it's like, here, you drive.
You get the responsibility.
They see that first 30-foot wave and they go, oh, I don't think I want to be captain anymore.
Is there an easiest part?
I find it all fairly easy. Sometimes the crew can be a little more than a handful, shall we say?
Managing people.
Especially, yeah, it seems sometimes that the crew and some of the guests, like as soon as the cameras start rolling, they morph into something that you've never seen before. It's like, who are you? And where did my premier deckhand go? You were so good. Camera started rolling and then you just turned into a schmuck. I tell everybody at the beginning of the season, if you keep your head down, do your job, all the rest of the stuff that you see going on around you will take care of itself. You don't need to worry about it. Everything will be just fine. Just do your job. You know, you got hired because they think you have a good personality and it's going to come across. So don't try to be somebody other than yourself, because that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for you to shine, and you do that best by doing your job. Sometimes they listen. Most often they don't. That's when we get the plane tickets out.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite
Send
parts.
them home.
Yeah, we bust them bad boys out, no problem.
As you should. Who's been the most satisfying to send home?
Oh God, there's a list there. Trevor. Yeah, Trevor was, I really enjoyed that one. I really did. You know, you better go back and be our hair model. He told me had a meeting with him, and it was going to be a come to Jesus meeting with him. And he says, Cap, he says, I finally figured out why the crew doesn't like me. He says, somebody told him I used to be a hair model.
Poor guy.
Yeah, that's it.
What?
That's the
You hit it on the head.
And Dane, he was another one I took pure pleasure in firing. He said, I guess I better resign. I said, oh, no. You do not get the privilege of resigning. In fact, you don't even have to go to your quarters and pack. I said, you can just get the fuck off the boat and we'll ship your stuff to you. No problem. Here's your ticket now. Get the fuck off my boat.
Now, on the flip side, who is the hardest?
Andrew Sturby, because Andrew was just such a likable kid, and he was having a hard time with he'd like to socialize with the guests and entertain them. But if he lived to be 100 years old, he was never going to make it as a yachtsman. Just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, he goes out of his quarters, we're underway, and he leaves the porthole open, and he's below deck, below the water line. I go down and there's water this deep in the crew mess. I'm just like,
Did the carpeting and the upholstery, did everything survive that?
oh no, we had to rip it out. I had him down there for hours with the little small shop vac sucking up water.
Right.
Leaving the porthole open while we're underway isn't really a good idea. And yeah, that wet mattress, that's still yours. You can sleep in that tonight. But that would have been a long crossing. He could have sunk the boat. All of a sudden, I'd be up in the wheelhouse wanting to know why we're listing to port. And all of a sudden, water's coming up the cruise steps. Yeah, it could have gotten ugly quick.
It must have been a calm water day on the pullout.
It was.
Yeah.
But yes, Sturdy, I didn't, because he was such a nice guy and he tried so hard. He just didn't have what it took. Generally in yachting, you'll find out pretty quick, or somebody will let you know. And he embellished his resume by a great deal.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
okay. Andrew, how much experience have you really had on boats? And he says, well, he says, I went by them on the dock and I've been on them before.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I can take that 200-footer out, no problem.
Alternatively, has there been someone that you've seen yourself in, or maybe helped along the way that you might not have put as much effort in otherwise?
Like Kelly Johnson comes to mind, and Kelly's doing real well. He's got a great job with a great owner. I mean, his owner pays him like stupid money. I keep telling him, I said, I should have taken your job, give it to you. And Eddie's doing really well. As much as I tried to get Eddie to stick with yachting, it's that blue collar in him and running tugboats in and out of the inner harbor in Baltimore. He just loves it. And now he's a captain. He's got his 3,000-ton license. So I'm pretty proud of both of them. Yeah, Eddie was just, and he was so good at yachting. He was great with the guests. He was a funny guy. I don't know what it is about tugboats. Maybe it's the big toy thing.
Who is the most improved yachty?
Switching gears, let's go. Gonna have to dig deep for this one. It definitely Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't Leon. That's another one I enjoyed getting rid of. I enjoyed that one.
He was my least favorite personally.
Who was? Gosh, I think it was Frazier. And even though we only had a couple of seasons together, Frazier was just a gentleman's gentleman. I thought, the strides that he had made from when I first got him to where he was when I left was just remarkable. And I was very proud of him. I stopped calling him Frazier and started calling him Mr. Olander. I don't know, he just seemed so prim and proper all the time. He did have his fun side, as I found out throughout the series. He never let it affect his work.
What is your most intense weather experience?
I remember we were in St. Martin. I forget what year it was. And the guests wanted to get off the dock. And I said, well, I really don't think it's a very good idea for us to get off the dock just yet. Yeah, it's a little sloppy out there. It's a little stoopy. And they were like moaning and complaining. The captain just doesn't want to work. He's lazy. Jesus Christ, we paid all this money. We can't even get off the goddamn dock. So I said, you three, the husbands, we're going to go take a ride. So I got the tender out and screamed out of the harbor. We weren't even out in open ocean yet. I'm coming off the top of like 5 to 6 footers. And we still haven't hit open water yet. And the boat is just pounding. They got water in places they didn't even know they had. And they said, okay, we've seen enough. I took them back. They looked like a bunch of drowned rats. The girls were up there going, how was it, honey? And they're just soaked. And they're like, we're not leaving the dock. And I don't mind it. I can take it. The boat can take it. But I promise you, you are not going to have a good time. So if you need me to prove that to you, I'll be more. I love that. I look back on that and I just shit-eat and grin. I love it. It doesn't happen that often that I get to exercise that kind of karma payment. Yeah, think what your wives would have put you through had I taken them out there and they all got sick and threw up all over everything and embarrassed themselves on national TV. You guys owe me big time. I didn't get a lot of people that got seasick because I was not willing to take them out in weather I knew it was going to cause that to happen. Some of the camera crew would. We had a couple of them that were just really susceptible to the motion of the ocean. It was like 4-foot seas. They were like green, and it's like, hey Scott, what's going on? Nothing. It's like, leave me alone. And they'd hang their head over the side and come back because they still had to work. But yeah, it's seasick is not fun. The only way you get around it is to get back on dry land. But it is something you can overcome.
Exactly.
Living proof. Took me a year, but I made it. And so I'd be out there in 8 to 10s going, hey, Chefy, bring me up some lasagna, will you? Rolling up the stairs with a cold ham sandwich. You get out there and it's like, what do? You can't go back, and you're not on charter. You're just, you're taking the boat down island, and you just get caught by a storm. You got to push on. There's no 911. That's not happening. And you can't say, here, you drive. And so what we do, we get everybody in, we put them, the calmest spot on any boat is as far back as you can get and as low as you can get. That's where you get the best ride. And some people make the mistake, oh, I need to get up top where I can get some air. Because if it's swaying like this down below, 40 feet up, it's swaying like this. And they insist on it, and I let them go. And I don't even say I told you so when they come back down. I'll hold their hair for them, wipe their chin off.
It's always really been our dream to do films and things like that. So in the movie of The Stud of the Sea, when we'll be producing later on in our years, of course, who is Captain Lee? Who will we be casting as Captain Lee? Who will be Mary Ann?
Wow. Boy, that's tough. Dead or alive?
Whatever you want.
Well, it's got to be alive because otherwise.
I mean,
that's true.
in the age of AI, we can do anybody.
Yeah, that's pretty much true, isn't it? I think John Wayne.
I love that. Your one-liners would be perfect.
Yeah, he didn't say a lot, but when he did, he had a way of making people listen. That would be a huge honor for me. That's if I had my choice of charter guests, dead or alive, he's at the top of the list.
What about alive?
Alive. I think Denzel Washington would be a hoot, just because I like his values. From what I know of him, I like him as a person, and he's just a stud. He is. I got into TV really late, so my kids already had their careers and stuff mapped out by the time Dad's going to do what? It's like you might want to have him sign here now, Mom, because he's unhittable. Yeah, I think I was 62 the very first season, and they said they didn't want any old guys on Bravo. No gray haired. We don't have any gray haired people on Bravo, so they didn't. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was like that baby that you got 2, 3, and then 10 years go by, and then there's another one. What happened here? Oh, we planned that. Sure you did. I was the oopsie. When we get down to St. Martin to start filming, all I was supposed to do is drop the boat off, go about my business. They had a house for me. I was going to go stay in the house, bring Mary Ann down for the next 8 weeks while they filmed, and I would go down and check on the boat for my boss, because the boat that we used was the boat that I was actually the captain on. So the captain that they had hired to be the captain on below deck, the insurance company wouldn't sign off on him. Now, he had a big enough license. Yeah, he had the paperwork, but when it came to experience, he didn't have it. I think Alex was like 24 at the time. And his favorite term for me all through season 1 was Captain Asshole. My boss told him, he said, well, you either use my captain or we're out of here. And that's the way billionaires are. They really don't care, because a 7-figure charter contract really doesn't move the needle that much for them. So it's either my way or we're done. We were going to spend the winter down there chartering anyhow, so it didn't make any difference to him. And so they said, well, all right, we'll use the old guy, but we'll film around him. which is what they did. And then anything in post-production, they cut me out of. So when I think they only did 10 episodes that season, then they sent it to New York, and New York goes, "Where's Kevin? Where's Lee?" The girl who was down there working for Bravo, she said, "Oh, I just made a game time call and we just shot around him, and we edited him out." Because we were supposed to, they had this huge production rollout that they were going to do. Big promotions, signs on buses, big things in Times Square and all this stuff. They had this huge budget, Bravo did. And they said, they sent him back to post and said, "Do it all over and find every piece of footage with Captain Lee and put him in it. If you have to redo the storyline, do it. You can't have a Maggie out without a captain that you never see." That's why it took, I think it was almost a year and a half before it actually got released. Yeah, it normally should take like 10 months, start to finish. You start in February and it gets, well, not that long. Start in February, usually gets released around November. Now that we've got it refined to a plug and play process. Said no, never.
It's funny enough because I was on our questions of like, as fans of the show, we noticed Alex was in there, but it was kind of awkward.
He was definitely meant to be the captain. And I had my 8 weeks planned out. We had a house on the beach. Marianne was coming down. I'm drinking foo-foo drinks on the beach all day long. And every third day when they come back in from their charter, I go make sure they don't tear the boat up, call the boss, say, "Everything's cool," hang up, go back to my chaise lounge on the beach. 11 years later, here we are. I didn't sign my first real contract with Bravo until I was 65, my third season.
Wow.
And the executive producer, Mark Cronin, comes up to my quarters. He said, "You didn't sign your contract." I said, "If you'd read all your email, Mark, you'd realize that I sent you an email, said I wasn't signing that." It was just a Boilermaker type contract and didn't have anything I wanted or anything that impressed me that I wasn't already getting from my boss. Mm-hmm. This is a lateral move, and I'm not interested in a lateral. Forward or not at all. He said, "We're going to have to stop filming." I said, "Well, shit, we haven't started yet." He said, "Yeah, but we're supposed to start this evening, and now we can't." So he leaves and he comes back about half hour later. He's got a bottle of Maker's Mark, 2 glasses, no ice. "You and I are going to get a deal done." They've set up 3 satellite phones. And God, between calling New York, Bravo, and the lawyers, we were in there for about 2 or 3 hours. And the phones are just like constantly running. And it's like $30 a minute for satellite coverage back then. I don't know what it cost to get that contract signed, but I enjoyed the hell out of it. It was a fun time. Don't mind telling you, there wasn't a lot left of that Maker's Mark when we walked out.
Are you ready for Vegas?
I'm not sure Vegas is ready for me.
That's perfect. That was my next question, honestly.
I haven't been there in, I'll bet, 30 years, and I can't wait to see the changes. I was there back in the day when the headliners were like Johnny Carson, Don Rickles, Sammy Davis Jr., and those were just like, wow.
Where were you staying back then?
Oh, wherever I could afford a room. Hell, I wasn't making any money then. Actually, I went out there on my boss's dime because that was my one stint at a corporate restaurant. And I was managing 2 Wendy's stores. They had their annual convention out there. Never let managers go to it. You had to be an area manager or a district manager before you got invited to the big show. And I had a bet with my boss that I could increase his sales to some astronomical number, which I fell short by about $300 or $400 a week. I told him I'd increase his sales in his store from $10,000 a week, which in 1985 was a really good Wendy's store, to $15,000 a week. And the prize at the end of the rainbow was $10,000 cash, taxes paid. That was a lot of money in 1985.
Absolutely.
So I didn't make it. I like I said, I missed it by a couple of $100 a week. And I said, well, I could have bought like $3,000 worth of burgers at a big burger party and put myself over the top, but I didn't want to win that way. And so as a reward for, I guess, a consolation prize, he says, I'm going to take you to Vegas for the convention. And that raised a lot of eyebrows because I was just a lowly store manager. What is he doing here? I made the most of my time. I remember thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, they have slot machines in the bathrooms.
Are you a gambler at all?
I did a little bit when I was younger, but I had a different approach to gambling than most people do. Like most people go like, okay, this is my limit. Well, I used to have two limits. I would say, here's how much money I am comfortable with losing. And I'm a firm believer in sticking to my limits. And then the second limit would be, here's how much money I'm comfortable with winning. Whichever one of those two I would hit and grab my chips, winning or losing, and I was gone. People would be sitting at the blackjack table and say, you're on a streak. What are you doing? I said, winning. It's not what you win or lose, it's what you walk away with. And they don't build those big flashy casinos on the backs of winners, no matter what they tell you. The first time I did the show was at the Hard Rock Casino, Hollywood, and I threw up 3 times before I went on stage. I thought I was getting seasick again. No, not after all these years. I mean, it's your job to make people happy and to make sure that when they walk out, they feel like whatever they spent, they got their money's worth and they had a great time, and you put a smile on their face. And that means that you have to spend a little more time at the meet and greet with every individual that you see. Like, we had 130 people in the meet and greet line, and nobody was going anywhere, and neither was I. I think we were there, show ended it ran, I hate to say it ran an hour and a half over, but nobody left. And then when it came time for the after party, there were certain people that paid extra money to go to the after party. And I mean, we finally had to cut off the amount of tickets we were selling for the after party. I said, because let's say you spend 1 or 2 minutes with each person that you're taking a picture of or something like that, and you want to have a little conversation with them, and then you multiply that times 130 people. I said, we can't sell anymore. It's sold out. It's just like, but we got through everybody, and everybody got their money's worth. And we were just as happy to see the last person in line as we were the first. That's the thing that's kind of gratifying about doing it. It's not how many people you can pack in, it's how many people can you make happy. And my goal is all of them.
Are you excited to perform on the same stage that Elvis performed?
That's like, should I really be walking out there?
You should. You
Should I be? I mean, that's like, I don't know, that's like the cowboys and Indians, and that's the sacred burial ground or something. It's just like hallowed ground. Yeah, there's been a lot of big names on that stage, and I'm just like, not quite sure how to deal with that. It's humbling, very humbling to think that I'm going to be on the same stage as Elvis and Wayne Newton and all the rest of those people that actually had talent.
So we're going to spout off a couple of one-liners, and we want you to rate it. So, madder than a pissed on chicken, 1 to 10.
God, that's got to be up there, at least a solid 8.
They can give their soul to Jesus because their ass belongs to me.
That's not just a leism, that's a truism. Without a doubt. If I'm at that point, there's nothing you can do.
I feel like a one-legged man at an ass-kicking competition. My favorite.
When you just have so many things going, and especially like sometimes when you're docking and, okay, the wind's blowing you one way, the current's going another way, the tide's going a third direction, and you want to go the 4th direction, and you have way more controls than you have appendages to handle. And you're just like, it's a juggling act. That's when you feel like a one-legged man at an ass-kicking contest. You're trying to get it done the best you can, but it's tough.
I love it.
Let's see, my favorite, the pucker effect is so strong you couldn't drive a straight pin up my ass with a 10-pound sledgehammer.
It's when you're docking in situations that generally most people may not attempt, and it's very real. It's like, snap that sucker off.
Who do you keep in most contact with
from the
show?
Yeah.
Kate, Eddie, Kelly, Rachel every now and again. Frazier, I get a call from on occasion. There's some people that I miss that I'd love to chat with again, but I just, you know how it just, time just flies by, and all of a sudden you go like, where do they go? Hannah, I like Hannah. Hannah and I have always we hit it off. I met her in person once in California. We were in LA and we were doing some pickup interviews, and her and I were out there at the same time, and we had just a great conversation. And I've always felt real close to her. Great personality, I thought. And I thought she was great for the show. Other than that, we've gone through so many crew because most of them are one and done. Connie was one of my favorites too.
Oh, yeah.
She had such a sense of humor. I mean, I remember her bringing her luggage on board. I said, what's in there? And she goes, my sewing machine. Whatever. Then I found out that Connie was a stud, plain and simple. She loved to fish. She loved to dive. We were filming in the Bahamas. It was colder than a well digger's ass. I mean, it was cold. We're out diving for lobster for the guests. She's got her eye on this big buck lobster that's sucked up underneath the rock. She comes up and she's blue. Her lips are blue and her teeth are chattering. And I said, get in the boat. I said, we're going back. I said, she can't take much more of this. She goes, no. She says, I'm getting him this time, boss. I said, all right. Down she went. Damn, she didn't come up with it. But I mean, I swear to God, her lips were blue. And the sewing machine, she would deliberately, people get dressed with their doors open all the time in crew quarters. It's just the way things are. No modesty whatsoever. So she would watch which pant leg or which leg of the shorts the crew guy would put on first. And then she'd sneak in and get his shorts when he was like taking a nap or something, and she'd sew the other one shut. So he'd put one on and get his leg through, and then he'd go to put the other one on and fall on his ass. And right when he thought he was safe, after he got through that mess, he'd stick his foot in his boat shoes, his deck shoes, and find out they were filled with either toothpaste or whipped cream or something. I love Connie. She was just like, and hardworking. And I mean, she was a stud. As a deckhand, there wasn't anybody that was any better than she was on board, on deck. It makes you laugh. Oh my God. I'd done some things that off camera.
I'd love to hear one of your off-camera pranks.
I'm not sure if we can do that.
Save that one for the nightcap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Why are you not on TikTok?
I really have no desire to be on TikTok. I've been on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, or X, or whatever the hell it's called now. For the first like 3-4 years of the show, I wasn't on anything. And then the producers going like, you're going to have to start interacting here. So I guess I was kind of a late bloomer in that sort of thing. And I just don't, I think 3's plenty, because I don't let anybody do my social media for me. I read it all. And if there's a response on there from me, it's from me. It's not from a publicist or somebody like that, even though I trust my publicist explicitly. And she does help me out with it, because sometimes I have, one might say, a crude way of putting things. It might have my dump truck mouth overload my wheelbarrow ass. Yeah, you don't want to let your mouth write a check your ass can't cash.
We see that your nightcap is scheduled at the Westgate, and we noticed that well, as fans of the show, we know that you met the Seagulls aboard charter, and we just wanted to see how that relationship has blossomed, and if that held any bearings as to why you scheduled there.
It did have a bearing on why I scheduled there, because I like David and Jackie a lot. I mean, they're two of my best friends. And, I always get a smile on my face when just out of the blue, my phone rings and I look down and it says David Siegel. And he's just calling up to check in and see how I'm doing. And it's just, we're both members of a club that we didn't want to belong to, and that nobody should ever belong to. And I think we just have such a deep respect for each other, because there's nothing, absolutely nothing in this world that is harder than to bury one of your children. It just, for whatever reason, when life throws you something, most things you can handle, that'll never be one of them. And that hole that it leaves in your heart will never, ever go away. And David's done such a great amount of work for opioid addiction, and his work with Narcan. And it's just amazing what he's done. And he's relentless on it. And so he and I, we worked together. And if I was going to do a show in Vegas, that's where it'd be, or it wouldn't. I wouldn't do it. Yeah, David, I'm down at Caesar. Do you want to come down and hang out for a bit? No.
Tell us about the intimate night with Captain Lee in your own words.
Probably going to be a lot of just what we've talked about here, my early years, how I got from there to here, some of the funny stuff, some of the not so funny stuff. Hopefully most of it'll make you laugh. I'm not going to lie, there's going to be some sad parts, but it's because I want people to be aware of what's happening. And it's just like, it's hard to get people's attention. And the way what I use as an example, if we had an airliner fall out of the sky once every day, fucking air travel would stop. Planes wouldn't be flying anywhere until they fixed the problem. They'd find out what it was. But that's exactly what we have happening with opioids.
Yes.
Over 300 people every day are checking out, and they're playing games. And I just find that abhorrent. I really do. And so some part of the show will be dedicated to that, because I try whenever I can, whatever platform I have, to make people aware of it and use that analogy. That'd be on every news station everywhere in the world if one plane a day fell out of the sky. And that's just the United States. That's not the rest of the world. And I have no idea what those numbers would be. But it doesn't make those parents go to bed and feel any better, or brothers or sisters or aunts and uncles. So, and then we're going to play some games that I think are going to be fun, a little different. But then I guess I'm kind of a different kind of guy. We'll, take a bunch of pictures. I think we've got 2 meet and greets. I think we've got a meet and greet scheduled ahead of the show and then one after the show. And basically just telling my story to whoever is willing to sit there and listen. I've had a lot of fun getting to where I'm at.
We actually have those. So we feel like you embodied the American dream, going from, managing a Wendy's to following a passion to taking risks to, and with a spouse.
Mary Ann is the best thing ever happened to me. She truly is. Without her, none of this would happen. And no matter what harebrained scheme I came up with, she was always right there going, let's do it. I remember one time our lease ran up on our apartment and we had a sailboat. And I said, I don't really have a job that I have to go to. I said, what do you say we take the next 30, 90, 60, 90, 120 days and just go sailing? So we loaded up all the kids and they say, well, what about school? I said, it'll be here when you get back. And it wasn't like, it was over a summer. And so maybe they'd miss 3 or 4 weeks or something going into the new year. Wasn't the end of the world. And I always felt that the experience that they would get being at sea and experiencing different cultures and lifestyles would benefit them as much. So away we went. We stayed until we almost ran out of money and then had to come back, and came back, got jobs, and went to work.
What would you say to the Lee working at Wendy's looking for inspiration?
I had always had a really good work ethic, just from growing up and going through the things that I went through when I was really young. And so hard work was never an issue. I only had one dream when I was young, was that I didn't want to be poor. Didn't have to be wealthy, but I didn't want to be poor. And that was always foremost in my mind, and never have been. You do what you have to do to make it work. So if where you want to be takes working 2 jobs, then you work 2 jobs. And if 2 jobs doesn't get it done, then you work 3 until you can find that one that pays you enough to where maybe you can let one of them go, or maybe you can let 2 of them go.
So we see you have a birthday coming up. Do you have any plans for your birthday?
Make it till then. No, I don't. Birthdays, I mean, they're all right. Mary Ann and I will probably just, do something on my birthday. We'll go out and grab some dinner or something like that. Big parties, milestones. Like people go, oh, you're turning the big 50.
Oh no.
Like, am I gonna die? Or they do the same thing with every decade.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Except one. Nobody ever came up to you and said, Ross, you're turning the big 20.
I got a speech at 2-1 though.
Oh yes.
Well, I think we all got that same speech.
Yeah, I think so.
All I was hoping for was, I just want to get through this next year of being 20 so I can get rid of this phony ass idea I've been carting around. It got me thrown out of more clubs than it ever got me into. That's what I want to do. Wasn't that what college was about then?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
It was. Like all my buddies went to college. I never did, but doesn't mean I didn't make use of their facilities when it came time to have
Golf was brought up. So I got to know, what is your favorite course and then also your dream course?
My favorite course right now in South Florida is a club called Adios. Definitely challenging. I was supposed to go play Pebble Beach this year and work got in the way. So that's still on my list. Pebble Beach, Spyglass.
What's your handicap?
I'm usually, if I get in the low 90s, I feel like I've had an exceptional day.
Awesome.
I've had a couple of shots at breaking, into the 80s. Haven't quite made it yet. I have had a hole in one.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Did get that. Won a car.
Ooh, what kind
Yeah,
of car?
it was a Lexus. Gave it to Mary Ann.
Was this in Florida?
Yeah, it was at a club called Boca West.
Heard of that. It's on the
And it was a par three, 175 yards, and I hit a hybrid into it, and it one hopped into the green. And I thought, well, shit, we're putting for bird. Life is good. I turned around, I'm walking back to the cart, and my buddy go, Lee, it went in the hole. I said, you guys are such dicks. I'm not buying that. I'm not falling for that. And then one of the other guys, Peter, he said, no, Lee, it did go in the hole. I said, Pete, he said, I'm just telling you, you nailed it. And they had observers up there to verify that it was your ball that went in the hole. So they didn't want anybody, winning something that they didn't deserve. Wait a minute. Hole in one, I got to pick up the tab for everybody on the course. I'm probably going to have to float alone here somewhere because there were 334 guys in the tournament, and Boca West ain't cheap. You get a cocktail there, it's $15, $18. That's how well my luck was running that day. It was an open bar.
Oh,
Couldn't buy a drink if I wanted to. I was all giddy. They gave me the flag off the hole. It was pretty cool. Check that box. It's pretty amazing when you walk up and
Where's my ball?
you look down in the cup and there it is.
Thank you so much for your time.
amazing.
It's my pleasure.
You're awesome.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.